Deacon Bob Evans serves as a deacon in that great diocese. He ministers at Blessed Sacrament Parish in Scottsdale, Arizona, and he joins us today to talk about his new book, which is going to help you, if you get a copy of it, to understand St. Paul better. It's called Understanding St. Paul. Deacon Bob, thank you so much for being with us today.
Well, you're quite welcome. Thank you for having me. Thank you.
We appreciate having this chance to meet you, and I want to ask you first and foremost, what caused you, what drew you to write so significantly on the life and the teaching of the great St. Paul?
Well, Bishop, it actually started about 20 years ago. A young seminarian from Ireland, a Killian McCaffrey, was serving in our parish one summer, and I was lecturing at the time, and after Mass he would regularly engage me in discussions about what we just heard from one of Paul's letters. And I was so fascinated with the intensity that he had over Paul's writings, the understanding he had, and I thought, my God, I'm missing something in my life here. I need to really dig into St. Paul. And so I did, and over the course of years, I read more and more, and the more I read, the more confused I got. As you know, there's an awful lot written about St. Paul. But I came across the writings of a Father Jerome Nere, who was the theology teacher at Notre Dame in the 1990s. And Father Nere's position was that to understand Paul, you have to understand the worldview of the people of his times. It shaped both the issues they dealt with and how he addressed those issues. And so I spent a great deal of time studying the first century, and then went back to Paul's readings and said, oh my goodness, Father was right. It really makes a huge difference in your understanding of Paul if you grasp how the people of his time understood the world around them and their relationships with one another. Later on, I was asked to give a semester-long class on St. Paul and his letters, and many of the students said to me after, you really need to write a book about this. There's too much for us to try to retain all at once. So that's how it came about. I never really intended to be an author. It was just responding to, doing what's asked of you. That's kind of the role we have. You do what's asked of you, and the Lord speaks to us through the people and the circumstances that he places us in, and so that's how it came about.
Well said. I know what you mean.
And part of what's asked of you is to mentor new deacons as well. Is there an intersection between that work and your work on St. Paul?
Yes, there is. In fact, I teach homiletics to new deacons and have given them classes on St. Paul as well. And there's an intersection there, and I of course teach many lay people as well. So teaching turns out to be a calling of mine that I never knew I had until I was in formation, and they kept insisting, no, Bob, you're supposed to be teaching. But I've never taught a thing in my life. Well, doesn't matter. Go for it, man. And so here I am.
Bob, every parish that I've been in, I have been blessed to work with a permanent deacon or more than one. And it's been an eye-opener for me to minister alongside men who, for the most part, are married and have families and full-time jobs. So for you, I have to ask you, what's been one of your greatest blessings in being ordained a deacon and in serving as a deacon and in teaching potential deacons?
I would say that it has been ministering to people at a time in their life when they've experienced a great loss. In funerals, in vigils, in committals, it's a time when they're really hurting, when the church really, really needs to be there for them in a gentle way. It's not a time to give them the hard sell, It's a time where you walk the journey with them. And in some cases, you walk the journey with their loved one as they're reaching the end of life. And it has turned out to be just a marvelous part of what God has called me to. And It just
Yeah, no, I get it.
I'm almost without words.
I totally get it, because as a priest myself, over the years, I think it's the most satisfying and fulfilling part of my ministry is to be with people when they're struggling, especially when they've experienced the death of a loved one. Because, I have, you have, pretty much we all have experienced the loss of loved ones, and so you know what it's like to be in their shoes, and you want to reach out and support them as much as you can. So I appreciate what you say. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Well, Deacon Bob, it sounds like you have an extraordinary overarching calling that manifests in some really exciting ways, whether you're blogging or you have your new book coming out. How can people find your work, both your blog and how can they purchase your new book, Understanding St. Paul?
Well, my blog is stevensbrother.com, and you'll recall that Stephen was a deacon and the first martyr, and so every deacon is one of Stephen's brothers. So my blog is named Stephen's Brother, and the book is from sophiainstitute.com, and it's readily available there, and that's how to find them.
St. Paul, no doubt the greatest preacher in the history of the church, the greatest evangelizer, but who can only be understood properly, as Deacon Bob said, when one first understands the life and the milieu in which St. Paul preached. Deacon Robert, thank you so much for joining us today. We hope people will find your book at Sophia or at your blog, and we really appreciate your time spent with us, and you're presenting this book to all of us in the church to help us to understand St. Paul better.
Well, thank you very much for having me, Bishop. And Claire, thank you so much.
God bless you, Bob. Have a great summer. Stay
Thank
cool.
you.
Stay cool.
Right.